Lep pozdrav vsem skupaj, še malo počakam, da odklikamo vse. Smo približno, ne? Lepa hvala za udeležbo, še posebej, ker ste se odzvali našemu vabilu, ki smo ga šele danes poslali. Zato seveda obstajajo razlogi. Predvsem bi vam želeli danes razložiti, predstaviti odločitev DUTB-ja, da prevzame lastniško vlogo v slovenskem gostinskem sektorju na način, da pretvorimo dolg v kapital, torej debt to asset swap. O razlogih za to odločitev, o postopkih, ki bodo to spremljali in seveda o pričakovanih izzivih take odločitve bomo govorili danes. To bo predstavil naš glavni izvršni direktor Torbjörn Månsson. Seveda bomo odgovarjali tudi na vaše vprašanja. Kot vedno bo pogovor tekel v angleščini, je pa tukaj tudi naš prevajalec Tadej Reisner, ki bo v spodku, če bo kdo rabil kaj pomoči, prevedel kakšno vprašanje ali odgovor, tako da kar povejte, če rabite dodatno razlago slovensko. Pojdimo kar na temo, predajam besedo našemu glavnemu izvršnemu direktorju. Torbjörn, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, welcome. Sorry for bringing in on a Friday. So today's topic is actually an announcement around what we're doing in the hospitality sector. The news really are, I think, three things. First, we have up until basically yesterday supported the management of Sava DD to develop a preventive restructuring plan aiming to, of course, deleverage the Sava DD situation and improve the hospitality assets. We have been presented this plan and we have considered very carefully. This plan is not something that either we or, as it looks right now, the other creditors, except for maybe one, can accept. Therefore, we are withdrawing that support of the preventive restructuring. The second thing we have done as a consequence of this is that we are then now taking on the responsibility of improving the hospitality assets that we're exposed to. And the step here this morning is that we have made a debt to asset swap, becoming the owner of Sava Tourism. We've also done a similar enforcement of a collaterals, taking over equity positions in Hotel Bernardin and a few other things. So really what we have done this morning is that we are now taking on the responsibility to drive the improvement, the necessary improvement in the hospitality sector that we're exposed to. So let me give you a little bit of the background to that and also what is happening next. The reason we're doing this is sort of found in the situation that BMC is actually exposed to almost 30% of all the hotel rooms, the hotel capacity in Slovenia, through some equity exposures now, but mostly through, of course, loans which are backed by assets in the hospitality industry. The Slovenian hospitality sector, which I think you're well aware of, is actually underperforming. The average performance in the Slovenian hospitality sector is unfortunately well below other European standards. And when we look at sort of the assets that we are exposed to, they are underperforming also the Slovene average. So there is an urgent need and a big need to improve the performance in the assets that we are exposed to. When we look now at the plan that has been presented by the current management team and of course the owners there, it's simply not good enough. And then we have to take responsibility to put together a better plan and implement that in order to do this. And this is what we're taking the steps to do. If I elaborate a little bit on sort of the reasons why we don't think that the plan that has been presented is good enough, there's a number of issues. One is that it is requiring us as creditors, we being the major one, but also the other creditors, to actually write off close to 50 million of the loans in a situation where the equity is negative, but the current owners will still retain 23% of the company as proposed. Basically, we will be funding the continuous ownership of the current owners, which has essentially already lost the value in the business. We don't think that's appropriate. But maybe even more importantly, the current preventive restructuring plan is a continuation over the next 5 years where funds are continually being, I would say, directed away from the core operating assets, the hotels, up to the financial holding company in order to serve the debt. So it would be a continuation of the situation where not enough investments are done in the key hotels in order to improve them. And this is something we'd like to change. We don't think that can actually be allowed to continue over the next 5 years. We also see signs of that the ongoing performance improvement could be improved significantly. And we base basically sort of our decision that we have found enough opportunities here to actually do something quite differently and much better, we believe, in order to actually improve this performance. There are at least 5, I would say, pillars that we think that we have a better plan than the current one that has been exposed. The first area where we think we can do better here is around making sure that these assets are generating revenues. Taking a consolidated approach to the hospitality assets we have, we think that much more can be done in terms of driving more visitors to the destinations we have, segmenting the hotels but also the offerings that the group have, work with, I would say, state-of-the-art go-to-market and approaches and revenue and yield management tools. So there are more to be done, taking a, I would say, coordinated approach around this for the whole portfolio on the revenue side. On the cost side, we have seen evidence of that there's been quite a lot of cost cutting done, but it's been done where I feel that it shouldn't be done. It has been done in areas where you actually are defining the experience for the customers. So cost cutting at the front end is usually something that you should try to avoid when you are exposed to hospitality assets. We will make sure that there is a right size in the cost. And when I look at it, top down from the outside, we see that, for instance, overheads in these groups, in these assets, are close to 20% of revenues. And this is far more than you can expect, basically, in a professionally run and very effective organization. Usually you talk about benchmarks around 7 to 10%. So that's an obvious area. So I would say having less cost in areas which is overhead and maybe even more cost in areas where you actually define the experience in the hotels, that is an area where we think we can improve. The third area is around investments. We have had for quite some time a situation where the cash flows generated in these assets are being used elsewhere, not being invested back into the operations to the extent that is necessary. We will change this. So there will be more investment into the assets. And I think related to that is actually investment in people. Hospitality business is about creating an experience for the customers, and you do that by actually making sure that the people that are delivering that service are incentivized, are well trained, and you make sure that you develop the business continuously. So investing in the people is also, I think, an area where we can do much better going forward. Fifthly, I think also that having a perspective on potentially separating what we would call real estate management from hotel operations might be useful. Of course not immediately, but over time. If I take the simple example, if you have somebody who operate one hotel, you would operate an hotel regardless of if you have a lot or not so many customers coming. There is no alternative. But you actually think about the business of owning a hotel compared as different from running the operations of the hotel over a portfolio. You could, by separating those two businesses, which really are two businesses, you could make decisions around, in this destination we have overcapacity of hotels. There might be an opportunity to convert a hotel to office, if that's sort of more generating, and vice versa. If you are operating a hotel, if you operate a real estate management business regarding hotel properties, you could potentially think that, in this area we don't have enough capacity, we will build a new hotel or convert a building into a hotel. And those type of things, you do better if you actually think about those two differences separately. And this is sort of what is happening in more mature hospitality markets outside Slovenia, and I think this is something we also can, by taking this approach, we can investigate if there's an opportunity to do more of that. So the vision really we see with this is that we will have well-operating hotels, well-managed hotels, well-invested hotels, and operating at a level which should, I would say, exceed average performance and hopefully exceed in the European standards here. Because in that situation, we have the basis for doing the opposite of what's happening right now. This group and this hotel group should be able to expand its footprint and maybe even sort of, the Sava River doesn't end at the border. Why should this hotel group not be able to expand eventually across borders? And I think the best defense of actually being acquired is that you perform better than anybody else, because then you're an acquirer instead of being acquired. So this is what we are now starting to operationalize and making much more detail. In order to do this internally, we are also taking some steps to create focus around these assets internally. So we are creating a portfolio around basically the equity stakes we're taking in that, which involves some 41 hotels which we're exposed to. We are basically looking at the assets, regardless if they're loans or equities or real estate in this hospitality sector, as sort of a portfolio, and we are also technically transferring some of these assets into a separate or special purpose vehicle, an SPV, in order to manage this more effectively. But it's a purely internal transaction. It has no external implications at all, but that's what we're doing. Eventually it could have could create flexibility around, if we need more investments going forward to develop these values, we could use the SPV in order to get partly financed and sort of do this appropriately over time. So those are the three things. We are not, unfortunately, we cannot support the preventive restructuring plan. We have stepped into the ownership of Sava Tourism and a few other equities as of this morning, and we are then also creating more focus around how we manage these assets internally. If I add one more thing, and that's sort of the key thing, I think we all understand the importance of having a well-functioning hospitality sector. It's sort of, we're talking about 13% of the GDP. So we have we now have to take and shoulder this responsibility to improve the performance here. But also, on a purely commercial ground for BMC, it's a good business. When we look at basically what we think we can return in terms of values for the assets case by case, and compare that to the case where we now take this approach and achieving what we're targeting, we're talking about that we are adding some 60% of value to this. And we are doing it, and we're making sure that that value is sort of kept and returned to the taxpayers, and not to either, I guess, the current owners, but also not to the future owners. If there will be future owners, which eventually there will be, because we are not a long-term strategic owner, of course, they will have to pay for this opportunity. So we are making sure that the value stays sort of in the hands of us in this room. Mm-hmm. That was basically what we had as announcement today. Quick questions, I guess, we're open for. Yeah.
Sigurno imate kakšno vprašanje? Izvolite.
What do you expect the repercussions will be, or the actions of Sava, let's say? They already mentioned they're going to go to court, or they dispute your actions. And what's the position, or did you talk it over with the let's say, Ministry of Finance or of
Yes, these actions are, of course, first of all, we do expect, as I think you have to, that a current owner would fight for the owner and so the values that are at stake, of course. So this is expected. We have actually done quite a lot of preparatory work in parallel to actually awaiting the outcome of this preventive restructuring plan. Quite frankly, we would have wished this plan to be much better. And this is the reason why we supported it from the beginning. But having now the situation where the plan is not good enough, we have to take action. That's what we're doing. So we do expect that to be some, I would say, some actions taken in order to see if this could be reversed. We don't think so. We have prepared ourselves quite well. We think that we're doing this, and we are of course doing it for the reasons I've just expressed. That we cannot allow this to be prolonged for another 5 years and have assets which are underperforming to the level that we have. We have kept our direct owner representatives, of course, sort of informed about this progress over the last 2-3 weeks when this is intensified since sort of the plan was presented first time. So the Ministry of Finance is fully informed. We briefed the Ministry of Economy personally yesterday here about what we intended to do, and they also are quite supportive actually in terms of what we're doing. We also briefed Bank of Slovenia. Both Sava DD, of course, are also exposed to Gorenska. So we have informed sort of the stakeholders continuously about this process, and more so specifically when we're now getting close to the actions that we took this morning.
What was their stance? Because just in the classification of state-owned enterprises, if I remember correctly, they said Sava is an important...
Sava is a very important asset, and I think when I read basically how it's expressed, Sava is there as a financial holding, and the reason is that the state would like to ensure that the necessary financial and operational restructuring is done as it owns the key hospitality assets, and that's the reason. And to some extent you can say that this is exactly what we're doing now. We're making sure that this actually gets done.
My question was this also the view of the Minister of Economy? Did he agree with you?
This is something that you should ask directly to the Minister of Economy. I can't sort of put words into to them. Sure.
What is your exit plan? You said you will step out in 2 to 5 years.
Well, first of all, this is not an exit strategy at all at this point. We have not actually developed an exit strategy as such. I mean, we're basically doing a little bit of the difference right now. We are making sure that we are stepping in and becoming owners, not exiting ownership. So it is actually a little bit premature to elaborate on how we will exit that or speculate in terms of who we would exit to. Long term, of course, we are not, we will always have a time-limited mandate, so we will have to find long-term owners that can do this. But I think the key point here is that we are making sure that the absolute necessary performance improvement, which is actually value creation, is done and kept by us. If there is somebody who's coming in and saying that we see the same thing as you do, we're willing to basically pay for that upside, we have to consider it. That's our obligation. So we are not by any means taking these assets off what we have to do. But I think the most important thing is that we will make sure that we will have time to find good owners. The value creation which has not been done up until this point, we will make sure that we will sort of get fully compensated for. So it's sort of the opposite of a fire sale. We are really making sure that we are getting fully internalize the values that actually those assets really have.
Just another question regarding Sava DD. The process of restructuring is aborted now, as I understand correctly.
So
what will happen
right.
with Sava? Main asset is gone. There is bank and some other small assets remaining.
Yes. So what is happening is, I think technically, is that the preventive restructuring is then stopped. The creditors will meet next week, and I think the likely outcome is that this probably will turn into a compulsory settlement instead. So, and then of course we are now the owners of the shares that were before pledged to us. So that ownership has changed. Still, Sava DD and the management team that has a very big role in actually making sure that the other financial holdings are managed in the best possible way and sort of used to deleverage the Sava DD, which is not out of the woods yet, of course. This transaction should really not have any impact on the standards of Gorenska, unless there's been some, I would say, misjudgment in terms of the book values in Gorenska, which we have no information of. But we have informed bankers' opinion about what we intend to, in order to make sure that there is no surprises on that side. But we are not running Gorenska, so we don't really know the situation there. But that's why we have sort of made sure that the stakeholders are fully informed around this.
Yes, do you have any negotiation with potential buyers such as Merrill Lynch or
No. There's no discussions right now about sort of selling those assets. What we will do probably is, though, that throughout this journey of value creation, we'll probably engage people that know how to package these assets and making sure that at any point in time we can clearly express what the value of these assets are. So we are considering on bringing on an advisor that usually advises on the sales process very early on into our ownership period here, but do not take that as a sign that we're sort of fire sale. Going to fire sale.
Approximately staying ownership?
I don't really know how long we would own it, but I know that it takes at least, well, it takes 2 to 5 years before sort of the performance has.
Minimum.
No, it takes between 2 to 5 years in order to actually do the performance improvement. How long we will stay on as owners, I have no view on right now.
Še kakšno vprašanje?
Yeah, did you just take ownership of the hotels or of the whole company, Sava Hotels, Mr. Vensturi?
So we had, for the loans we had with Sava DD, for some of these loans, the shares of Sava Tourism were pledged to us, and we have an opportunity to do a debt to asset swap, which we actually did. For part of that holding we did, there's sort of 2 steps in this, and there's sort of remaining 1% outstanding, which we now sort of basically, making clear our intention to get in as well. So we are taking the steps to become 100% owner of Sava Tourism. For the other assets, we still are exposed mostly through loans, which are backed with hotel assets. So there's no change in the other things. We still sort of have the exposure here through the debt. But by forming this, I would say, the core ownership, we will make sure that we now start taking the actions as we were owners of the hotels, in order to make sure that we put in place the necessary financial and operational restructuring as we go forward.
Just mentioned in the article. Sorry, just one thing. In an article in Finance, it was mentioned that you also took ownership of Istrabenz Tourism, or some hotels on the beach, on the seaside.
We should really, in the press release you have some of the more specific details. The whole approach we are sort of doing right now internally is that we actually forming this, I would say, portfolio of some 41 hotels. And also some of the related assets around that. So the specificity of that is quite complex, and there are different stages of exposures we have. So I'll be happy to sort of provide all that information, but it's sort of difficult to do over a press conference like this. Yeah.
Yeah, you can provide that.
Much actions in that direction.
Okay, all right. Yes. Okay, more questions?
Še kakšno vprašanje? Ok, super. Hvala lepa za vašo pozornost. Hvala za petkov popoldan, ki ste nam ga podarili. Naj povem, da je v naslovu, malo več dela. Naslovu je ena nedoslednost. Tukaj smo napisali, da smo 30% hotelskih namestitev prevzeli, nimamo izpostavljenost 30%. To sem hotela opozoriti, malo nerodna napaka z naše strani, naše službe.